Okay, let's get into that for a moment. By the way, the most important part of a pivot is the pivot point. If prices cross the pivot point for the first time in the day or battling at the pivot point, as you can see they were, actually the pivot point would have been different back then. So, oh yeah, I'm looking at the time here. Just remember that these pivot points have a 24-hour life cycle, so you just apply it to the previous session. And that's actually the 23rd, so never mind. But when prices cross up and down the pivot point for the first time in the day, there's certainly a lot of psychology with that. If prices are above the pivot, it's expected that prices are more or less strong, as below the pivot, more or less weak. So those are some basic assessments. And by far, the most important level of this entire series is the pivot point itself. Okay? Now, can I find which of these levels might be more important? You know, I'll tell you, if you have a pivot point that's overlapping with a Fibonacci number, or if you have a pivot point or the support and resistance that accompany them overlapping with a psychological level, the 00, the 50, the 20, the 80, you're looking at multiple reasons why that level could be important to different participants. Okay, that's a huge part of support and resistance. Is that level being watched for more than one reason? Is there a support and resistance level that might have the 200 period simple moving average nearby, or a 00 nearby? Okay, or the pivot point itself. You know, those are the types of overlaps that make a level even more psychologically relevant and therefore even more strong. Okay, all right. So let's jump subjects over to Fibonacci. I think Fibonacci, in my opinion, is way more powerful than pivots, if done correctly. But the number of people that do Fibonacci correctly is very hard to find. Because for whatever reason, luckily, the person who taught me Fibonacci, this isn't anything that I did on my own. I've got to give credit where credit's due. The person who taught me Fibonacci was very good and understood that Fibonacci is extremely subjective, and understood that the only thing that was going to allow people to get the most out of it is that they're willing to put in the time to understand how subjective it was, and that there was no such thing as only one Fibonacci move on a chart. Every move is being retraced. We're just looking for the last major retracement. There might be different retracements in different directions. Okay? The idea that you just pick the high and the low on the chart and pull Fibonacci's, which is what most people do, which makes me ill to no end, is what sadly Fibonacci's become. People do this and then they become very frustrated with the tool because that is the absolute wrong way to do it. I'm very opinionated about my Fibonacci use because I see entirely too many people doing it 100% wrong and then bad-mouthing it because their skills are terrible. It really makes me upset. Now let me show you real quick. When you're setting up your Fibonacci, the levels that you're going to use are the 23.6, and again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. We have a session where we covered this already. But the 23.6, and you'll notice, to show the price, you do 23.6, then you do the @ symbol, and then the percentage, and then the dollar. And what that does is it shows you the price at which that Fibonacci level is at. Okay, otherwise the normal default just puts the percentage there, and you have to go determine that differently. But to me, having the price right there is very nice. So 23.6, 38.2, the 50%, the 618, the 100%. Now those are all retracements. Okay, I also add in the 786% and the 886. Those are all retracements. Anything below 100% is retracing the last sell-off or the last rally. It's basically retracing its steps, right? If I went from A to B, going back from B to A is essentially a retracement, yes? Okay? And any percentage of that move between B and A could be defined by Fibonacci. So if I make a 23.6% retracement from A to B, I've just gone that much, only 23.6% back to A. It's like retracing your steps. 100% means you've come around again. You've come full circle in a sense. If you went from A to B and you went back to A, that's 100%, right? So that's the way we look at those levels. All right, so considering that this is just a way of calculating support and resistance, okay, what we want to keep in mind is, just like pivots use the high-low close and the little calculation, this is the same thing. I'm just looking at support and resistance, but the calculation is completely different. I think it's much more relevant. Okay, now do I have a bias towards Fibonacci? Yeah. I think it's 100% better than pivots. I understand why pivots are important, though. They're psychologically relevant, super easy to calculate. Okay, it's going to be way harder for you to get better at doing Fibonacci. I won't kid you. I'm not going to give you any illusions whatsoever. Getting Fibonacci down right takes time and practice, but anything worthwhile actually does. So anything below 100% or a full retracement is a retracement. Once you get beyond 100, there's these things called extensions. Okay? Now the extensions just simply say we've made 100%, we've come back from where we started, and now we're going beyond that. And that's when you get into these extensions. And the extension levels that I use are the 1.272, the 1.618, the 1.886, okay, and the 2.618. Okay, if you want to put in the 4.236, that's fine too. That's fine too. So the 1.272, the 1.618, and the 1.886 to me are the ones you really, really want to make sure are there. If you want to go ahead and add the 2.618 and the 4.236, that's fine. That's fine. You can. But those are all the levels I use, and you can see them all right here on the chart. Okay, here's basically up to the 1.886. So between 0 and 100 is just the retracement. Beyond that is the extension. And again, one more time, the way you add in the price is you put in the description the @ symbol, the percentage symbol, and the $sign. And that's it. Okay? And once you put these settings in, the platform will remember it. So it's not like you have to do it every time you do a Fibonacci. Okay? All right, so let's go ahead and talk about what a last major move is.